As with any deliverable, before you submit it, you're going to want to create a checklist that you can use to make sure that your Project Libre schedule doesn't have any obvious or disastrous, certainly, errors in it. So what are obvious or disastrous errors in a Project Libre schedule? Well, imagine that you give your boss or your customer, one of your stakeholders, a schedule that you've created, and there are resources in it that are over allocated, or there are some tasks that don't have any resources assigned to them at all, or the calendar is missing holidays. If your stakeholders catch these kinds of errors in your work, they will always wonder what other errors are in your work. So be proactive and prevent these errors from getting into your deliverables. I want to tell you a quick story here. I did some consulting for a vice president at a large company. She was the vice president over an IT organization, and this vice president asked all of her project managers to start using a project management tool and to submit their project schedules to her for review. And she hired me to actually do the reviews. And there were schedules that were submitted that said, project X would be done in 6 months. But when I looked at the resources were allocated sometimes 10,000 hours in a year, and of course there's only 2,000 working hours in a year. So obviously, if you have resources in a schedule that are assigned 10,000 hours of work in a year, they're not going to be able, the schedule, the 6-month duration is not viable for that schedule. So this is the kind of thing that I'm talking about, where what you want to do is have your Project Libre schedule model a realistic, a viable schedule. Okay, so here are a few items to check for in your schedule before you submit it. Now, the list I'm going to give you here is in no particular order, and it's not exhaustive. So you may want to add some of your own items to this checklist as you become more familiar with the tool. So the first item that I would like to mention is that you put on your list, your checklist, is that all tasks have resources assigned to them. Now, if you look at our schedule, you'll notice that we added a task called wash pots and pans. Remember, this was the task to demonstrate what something not on the critical path would look like. So what I'd like to do here is, and if you notice, if I pull this over, there's no resources assigned to that task. We never did assign a resource to it. So what I want to do is I'm going to go ahead here and I'm going to insert the cost column again. There's the pull down. Come on, cost. Okay, so notice that the cost is $650. Now, if I now assign me to this, yeah, the cost goes up. I mean, it makes sense, right? That the cost went up to $750 because there's a 2-hour task that I did not have a resource assigned to. So you, hopefully you can see why this is so critical. If you have resources not assigned to tasks, then you're going to get the cost wrong, let alone have resources be over allocated when someone figures out, we need to get this task done and no one's assigned to it. Someone's going to have to pick that up. Okay, so the first one is make sure all tasks have resources assigned to them. The second is make sure that the calendar has that the resources are using has appropriate holidays in it. So remember, if we go here to our calendar, our standard calendar, we can see what days on the calendar are working days and which ones are not. So depending on where you live and what your holidays are, just make sure that for the span of time that your schedule is for, that holidays are accounted for on here. Otherwise, what happens is if you have a day here that's a holiday and you have it as a working day, right? Then your once your schedule is committed to, if no one catches that error, you are automatically a day behind schedule based on that. All right. So the second one is make sure the calendar is appropriate, has appropriate holidays in it. Now, make sure that the third one is make sure vacations are accounted for somewhere. So what I do is I create a schedule item called vacations, and I would make it a item underneath the overall project. So if I go to task and I say indent, oops, it was already indented. So okay, so now I've got a subtask called vacations underneath my project summary task, and then I will say me, I'll say Chris, I'll say Pat, and I can indent those, right? So I can nest my indents. Notice that if I just want to show my high-level tasks, I can hide all my subtasks if I want. But anyway, this is where I would put the actual vacations. So if Chris has, let's say Chris has more than one vacation, right? Add two new items here. So there's vacation 1, there's vacation 2. Indent these so you know they belong to Chris, and indicate what specific days Chris is going to be on vacation. That way it becomes very obvious to everybody exactly when vacations are, when people are taking vacations, and it will prevent the scheduling tool from allocating work for these people on those times, at those times. So that's my recommendation on how to handle vacations. Make sure that there are no resources. This is a fourth item. Make sure there are no resources that are entered into the project management tool multiple times. So to figure this one out, go to the resources tab, go to the resources view. In our project here, it's pretty simple. We have just 3 resources. But imagine, and I actually see this pretty regularly when I review schedules. Pat could be entered here as Pat, could be entered as P. Smith, could be entered as Pat Smith. Okay. Now to the project management tool, these 3 are 3 different people. Pat, P. Smith, and Pat Smith are 3 different people. And so so the project management tool could easily assign work to them independently, as if you have, and so what ends up is your schedule has more resources than you really have. In this case, you only have Pat, but it looks like you have 3 Pats. This is effectively the same as if you had put, for Pat, if you would have put 300% out here as max units, right? So be careful with the standards by which people's names are entered into your schedule. You probably want to come up with a convention. I've just used first names here, but you might want to use a convention of first name dot last name or something like that, just to be clear on, or use user IDs, something like that, to try to help prevent duplication of resource names. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and delete these now, so my schedule's doesn't have that problem. Okay. Okay, so the fourth one was that there were no resources entered into the project management tool multiple times. So the fifth one is that there are no dangling tasks. So a dangling task, this is what I call a dangling task. So a dangling task is a task that has no predecessor or successor. What that means is that every task is associated with our getting to done for this project. What I do to make it easier to spot dangling tasks is I create the project start and the project done, right? Done milestones, and I link my project tasks to them, right, as appropriate. And we've done that here. Okay. This way I can easily check for tasks that have no predecessors or no successors. So what we're saying here is if I go here and I insert a column, and if the column that I insert is successors, so this is telling me which tasks are predecessors, right, and which tasks are successors. So what we want to check for is that there should only be one task that doesn't have a predecessor, and that's the start task, and there should only be one task that doesn't have a successor, and that would be done, right? There's nothing that comes after done, and there's nothing that comes before start. If any other task, right, doesn't it has a blank, doesn't have a successor, or doesn't have a predecessor. In fact, every other task should have both, right? It should be associated with start, and it should be associated with either be associated with start or done, or have some other task before it. Then you have a situation where you need to question, is this task really necessary? So in this particular case, what we're saying is, in order to get to done, yeah, we have to do pots and pans. So another predecessor here would be 7, right? So for done, you have to be, not only do you have to finish the cake at the reception, but you have to wash the pots and pans as well. All right, so the 5th check that you should do is that there are no dangling tasks. Again, what you want to avoid is tasks that that are assigned work and they need to get done, and they or you think they need to get done, and yet they don't seem to support any other work in your project schedule. This is a way to make sure, this is a technique to make sure that all work is leading to done, right? So no dangling tasks. Okay, the 6th one is that your resources on your schedule are not over allocated. Now, I think we've been there before, but if we go to the resources tab and go to resource usage view, you can see that our resources are not over allocated, right? I've got 8 hours of work on Monday, and I've got 7 hours of work on Tuesday. So I've got 2 full days, but I'm not over allocated. So over allocated here would be 15 hours of work. Now, we're not saying that over allocated is necessarily wrong, as long as it's planned for and everyone's aware of it, right? 17, 12-hour days. There are times when people have to put in long hours. 17 is a little ridiculous, but as long as it's not over any sustained period, the occasional burst of need to work very long hours, it can be done, and as long as you're taking care of your resources in some way and compensating for that, either with money or with time off, with pay, that's probably okay, right? But be careful with overtime. And so and certainly from a modeling a schedule, you don't want to model overtime, right? You don't want to say, hey, yeah, we can get this in 3 months, and then when people look at your schedule, you say, yeah, you can do it in 3 months if everyone works 12-hour days every day for 3 months. That's just not realistic. So that's really what we're looking for, is we're looking to model our project's schedule in a tool like this one, so we can get a feel for how long will it really take, given the resources we have, to get this schedule done. So the 6th check that I'm recommending is make sure your resources are not over allocated. Now, the 7th check, this is the last check I'm going to talk about in this video, is, does the schedule and budget make sense? So in our case, we need to deliver on Sunday, right? Deliver the cake on Sunday by 2 p.m. So we need to bake the cake on Saturday, and that means we probably need to buy all of the ingredients we need on Friday. So if we look at our Gantt chart, go back to task and look at our Gantt chart, we can see that that's just simply not what's occurring. All right, let me zoom in here a little bit. All right, so right now what we're modeling is, you can see that our schedule starts on Monday. We buy our ingredients Monday morning, we bake into Tuesday, and then we're done on Tuesday. So that really doesn't that's not exactly right. So what we want to do is go to the project information, Actually, what we want to do is go to File, Information, and this is the information about the project itself. So much more realistic would be for our project, like we said, we want to buy the ingredients on Friday, right, for a Sunday delivery of the cake. So instead of having our project start on Monday, let's have it start on Friday, the 24th, in our particular case, okay? So now we've changed it so our project starts at 8 o'clock in the morning on Friday the 24th. And everything still looks good. We can deliver on Saturday here. Well, wait a minute. No, we want to deliver on Sunday. Now, we don't want to bake on Friday because, we want the cake to be as fresh as possible. So we want to bake it on Saturday. So what we can do, there's two ways to do this. Actually, you can click and drag these bars around, but the way I prefer to do it is, if I want to move a task, if I have a task that I say has to start at a certain time, if I double click on the task and go to Advanced, there are things called constraints on tasks, and here are the different constraint types. So in our case, we're saying we want this making a cake task to start on, it must start on, right, Saturday at 8 a.m. Now we could say we can't really use as soon as possible. That's the default, and if we do that, it's going to start right after we buy ingredients on Friday. We can't say start no. We could say start no later than and set Saturday morning, right? But the problem we have is if there's if other tasks push this task to later than Saturday, we might never know it. So really the right way to do this is to say must start on, and we want it to start on Saturday the 25th at 8 o'clock in the morning, okay? And then we'll say close. So now if we look at our schedule, you'll see that we're starting at 8 o'clock in the morning on Friday to buy the ingredients. Saturday we cook all day, and then at Sunday we deliver and we wash the dishes. Right now, notice that here, though, we have a problem where I can't be driving the car and washing the dishes at the same time. So here we're transporting the cake to reception at 9, and then we're going to wash the pots and pans at 10. How are we going to do that? We'll be at the reception at that point, okay? So I think really the right way to do this would be to say washing pots and pans has a predecessor, not just of make cake, but we probably want to also have a predecessor of finishing the cake at reception. We might even want to have a drive back, but we don't really care. Washing the pots and pans just needs to happen probably after everything else is done. So why don't we have it finish after our finishing the cake at the reception, which means it looks more like this, and it puts it on the critical path now, right? So done is actually that we finish the cake at the reception from 9 to 11, which is probably about right? We drive there from 8 to 9 on Sunday. We finish the cake at the reception. We're done with the cake at 11. If the wedding's at 2, that's probably a reasonable thing. And then we have a wash pots and pans task that we have to do, but of course we can do that pretty much any time after the reception is finished. So we kind of don't care. All we really care about with washing pots and pans is that we're actually that it gets done at some point, and that we accumulate that cost. Okay, and then here's some vacations we talked about, but we don't really need to worry about them. So this looks pretty good in terms of modeling our schedule, and it should give us a pretty good feeling that our schedule is viable and doable just with me at this point. Okay. Now there may be a better way to model this. We could put a milestone in here for finishing the cake at the reception, just to indicate that there's really two kinds of done for this project. There's a done in terms of completely done with everything, but then there's a done that our customers really care about, which is that the cake's at the reception and it's finished and ready to go, right? Our customers don't really care about washing pots and pans. So in this case, we kind of have two dones in a way. So, all right. So what we've done is we've gone through our schedule and we've done 7 quality checks on our schedule to make sure that what we submit, right, for our stakeholders, what we're submitting as a schedule modeled in this project management tool is viable. That when our stakeholders look at it, they're not going to catch obvious errors and say, wait, I can't believe, what you guys are or what you're giving to me. You always want to be careful to hand high quality deliverables to your stakeholders so they trust in your work and trust in the what you have to say to them about what's viable and what's not with your schedules.